And we're back. So, what's up? I'm having a think lately on whether or not to get games digitally or physically, and I want to kind of bring it up to you guys on which side is better and why. So, recently, a lot of games have been just straight up not getting physical releases, and we're kind of blessed with a handful that are still getting some, but like the Fallout 4 Anniversary got a physical release, but it's just a download code, and then Nintendo's going out and doing a lot of game key cards on the Switch 2s that aren't the best thing, and that kind of begs to differ. Why do we even get physical release games? And that's the thing. I guess it ultimately comes down to ownership, whether or not we own the games that we buy from the store, the digital or the physical. And it's gotten kind of really murky recently with these game key cards, these digital downloads, everyone changing their end user agreements. It's kind of changed a little bit in the way I think of buying games, and I'm like, some games should I just straight up just buy digitally or even just like not buy it at all because of the way these companies are doing business. Even in recent years, some games from even the previous generation have gotten a little bit questionable, even in their collector's editions. Games like Horizon Forbidden West or God of War Ragnarok, where they'll come out with a big like collector's edition, and then you'd find out that there's no game in there. It's just the collector's edition. You either have to buy the game separately as a disc or download it, or in some cases they'll I believe most recently Death Stranding 2 actually, you got the collector's edition and it did not come with the game physically. It came with a digital code in the box, so at the very least you're still paying for the game with the collector's edition versus the game and the collector's edition. But that still kind of sucks. And the older I get, I start to think, does it even matter? Do I even actually care? Because we have things like this now, the Nintendo Switch, or even like all the other handhelds that are so small, it makes gaming on the go easier. And having the games in our library digitally, it makes them easier to play and pull up from the consoles wherever you are, instead of having to physically have that cartridge and slot it in whenever you want to play it. So things like the Switch library, or things like your Steam library when you're on the Steam Deck or any of the PC-based handhelds, it allows you to like more freely play the game versus just thinking about getting the game, putting it in the console, and like starting it. It becomes the whole issue with console gaming or couch gaming is that it becomes its own ritual where you have to be at home, cozy, like not busy, and you can kind of dedicate hours into playing something and sitting down and playing the game by yourself or with friends. And being able to be more mobile, and the Switch has kind of done that in some capacity. And a lot of these mobile handheld PCs have kind of given way to maybe not needing physical games anymore. I know a lot of people love Steam, and PC gaming for the most part for the last decade or so has been very much a digital centric experience, and they're not exactly complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm able to switch PCs whenever I need to. Even some games run on handhelds decently, or even on the Mac. If that's a thing that you do, you can run a few games on there from your Steam account, and you can play anywhere. And most recently, people really like had a knee-jerk reaction to all the end-user license agreement changes, or the rise of game key cards and digital download codes on physical copies, that people started building quite substantial physical libraries. And that kind of gave rise to this weird retro materialism that we've all been into. A bunch of like Game Boy games, disc games, cartridges. It makes gaming a bit more archival than it is playing the game, because you're now at this point trying to protect the game's like posterity moving forward, because some of these publishers have been aggressively taking down ROM sites and a variety of low, slightly questionable sources for retro games. And that's understandable, but we're all stockpiling a bunch of stuff that we're probably never gonna play. I myself have a massive backlog, and I probably played like 10% of these games. And the reality is, we're getting busier and busier, and as you get older, that just kind of happens. You have more responsibilities at work, in like your personal life, family, etc. That playing video games becomes an afterthought, and the more friction we put in between us and playing the video games prevents us from essentially like playing the video game and having fun. I think that's why I've kind of started having these conversations about whether or not digital is actually good or not. It gives you that immediate access to something, and you can play it on the go and not have to think about all these like physical things making like that space happen just for you to play a game. And it allows you mobility, and you're able to play the game wherever you are, and it doesn't make you want to not play the game. Like I said, it removes any friction you have with playing video games. And as you get older, the backlog just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger. And playing a game versus when you were younger, I probably was able to go through games pretty quickly and efficiently, trophy hunting, achievement hunting, and all that stuff. And you're able to beat games pretty rapidly, play them as completely as you can, and, be done with it. And then it just becomes essentially set decoration at that point. And I guess that's what I'm getting at is, do we still need physical games to enjoy the games? Obviously, we kind of do, because these companies, much like media companies themselves, have made these games a little bit more difficult to access, especially for older games. A lot of them have been taken off storefronts because of license agreements between companies. You have a lot of games now that are like live service that kind of just vanish after the service no longer is making money. So there's no like physical way to access those, pieces of art, worlds created by tons of artists, and music and gameplay mechanics that we'll probably never see again because those things are inaccessible. Games like Anthem, games like, not the best games, but Concord recently was up for 2 weeks and then it was gone, but it was playable. It looked good. There was probably some good stories waiting to happen in Concord. I like the kind of semi-Pixar narrative they were going for in like a weekly fashion, but it just didn't click. Corporate had like a knee-jerk reaction, took down the entire game, refunded everybody, and put it on ice, essentially. And even for the people who bought the game physically, a lot of the actors who worked on the game, who did the voice acting, went out and bought the game in person, because some of them, it was their first voice acting gig, and that game is basically inaccessible to them. The work they did wiped out of the internet, maybe like on a YouTube video at the very least. But yeah, kind of weird, kind of sad. And this isn't just about gaming too. This kind of involves a lot of media content from the last decade or so, even longer. Movies, music that are just straight up inaccessible because whoever owns the copyright either removed it from whatever service, or no service wants to pay for it, and no one's making physical copies for them anymore. Most computers don't even have a disk drive anymore, so if you have Blu-rays, if you have DVDs, I hope you have a player. A PlayStation could do it. If it's the disc-based PlayStation, an Xbox I think could do it. But yeah, so a lot of things, music too, CDs, inaccessible. It's bad, but it's also good because now you can access movies remotely even without having a disc. You can access music, wherever you are through Spotify, YouTube, whatever service you use, and not have to worry about lugging a disc or even scratching those discs. And I guess that's where we're at. We're at that quote that every CEO's been saying for the last, decade, that you'll own nothing and be happy. Video games, movies, TV shows, music. And we've hit that part, or like kind of getting to that point where everything is a service and we're just getting rights to use them. And It has its pros and cons. Some of it I like, some of it I don't. The physical part is good because you have, access to them in perpetuity, but then it kind of gives rise to this friction of playing the game, having to pull out the console that plays it, put in the disc, make sure it's not scratched and it's working, the cartridge, make sure it's fine, and then playing the game versus just playing the game. I know a lot of ROMs kind of have good utility in that kind of realm where you just like pop the game. Some of them have save states now, so that's really good. But then the digital side kind of has that going for it where you can play anywhere on any device without having to worry about disc owning it. And it's good from like a playing the game standpoint, but it's kind of annoying in the property standpoint where we're paying essentially just to have access to stuff. It's like rent. We're just renting stuff at this point, like in perpetuity. We have our subscriptions for all the various devices, for all the different subscription services, and it's annoying. So, what do you guys think? Is digital good and is physical good, or which one is bad? I'm not really sure. I'm kind of in between. I feel a little bad over the decade. I've still amassed a good physical library, but I've also done a mix of digital, but they're all stuck in one console space on the PlayStation for the most part, or on the Nintendo. And, I feel like we're moving away from that and kind of going to a more centralized system. I hope someone builds like a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally that has access to all the storefronts, so you have access to your entire library across different services: Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Steam, Epic, whatever. And that might be the best way to do it, where you have license ownership of a game to access remotely anywhere you want and not have to worry about having a physical unit to, have a storage of that little cartridge of that game. But also, it's kind of nice having the physical copy as a memento of a game you played before, but it seems silly. So what do you guys think? Let me know. All right, catch you later. Bye.